Welcome back. It began with a typical argument in the internet age. A model in New York badmouthed somebody. Then that person set up an anonymous blog and got back at the model by maligning her online. However, the model then fought back with lawyers. She took Google to court to force Google to reveal the blogger's identity, and she won. The blogger is now threatening to take Google back to court for revealing who she was. Now, the argument itself was quite petty. However, the legal ruling may have implications that go far beyond this case and could end up affecting the rights of all bloggers to anonymity. The Listening Post's Salah Qadar now on some other cases that are food for thought for bloggers and for the people who read them the world over.
The blogosphere. 10 years ago, it didn't even exist. It's a place where anyone can write anything about anybody else, and that secret world has got people talking.
All right, so where to begin with this one, right? You've got one woman calling another woman names, and that woman gets named in court.
We're now getting into a stage where everybody is worried about their online reputation.
And the winner in the case is a New York fashion model who turns out to be the pioneer. It could set a new precedent.
Things that don't go in the real world, as it were, or an offline world, it doesn't automatically mean it should be permissible in the online world.
All right, so it's ugly. She's not ugly, but that website is, and it is about as mean as anything I've seen online, at least, but is it unlawful?
There's good online anonymity, and there's bad. There are lots of cases where anonymity is very important.
The very public spat between model Liskila Cohen and unmasked blogger Rosemary Port was certainly trivial, but it did raise legitimate questions about anonymity online. Some bloggers want it, others do not.
A lot of bloggers are on the record. They have their names on their blogs. You can see their profile pages. They often link to their Facebook profiles, their Twitter accounts. They want you to follow them. That's why they're talking on a blog as their stage. I don't think it's online anonymity is prized by everybody who's blogging online. I think it's prized by people who have something to say that they are worried for some reason that there's going to be either some social or political fallout.
Such fallout was certainly evident in the case of blogger Nightjack in the United Kingdom.
Nightjack was an anonymous blog by a serving British police officer. He was writing an insider's account of what it's like on the front line, policing a local community. The Times newspaper had followed his blog carefully and reckoned they knew who he was and that they would publish his name. He went to court in an attempt to stop them from doing that and lost.
He was outed. The policeman's name was Richard Horton.
The Times argued that he had been giving away information about certain cases, but I think people were quite surprised that the Times had pursued this. He wasn't doing anything malicious. He was a blogger that was actually respected by a lot of people, who had been heralded by a lot of the mainstream media.
Two very different cases on two different continents, but the outcome is the same. Anonymous bloggers under increasing pressure to reveal their identities.
All bloggers should realize that their anonymity is subject to be taken away. It can be taken away if somebody finds out independently who they are, or it can be taken away if they get into a situation where a court orders the service on which the blog is hosted to reveal their identity.
I think with all these cases, it's very complicated because you've got different reasons for blogging. So I can't see it being right to make a legal precedent that affects all bloggers that want to blog anonymously.
So when should a blogger be allowed to write anonymously? Certainly, when it comes to authoritarian regimes, the mainstream media rely on anonymous bloggers on big stories as a key way of reporting a world we would never otherwise hear about.
So if you look at the Iraq War, Salam Pak's blog, this is a young guy on the ground in Baghdad telling the world what it was like on the ground at a time when journalists couldn't get in. Vital for him to be able to maintain his anonymity.
In Iran right now, we've just reported on a blogger who is sort of couch surfing from house to house and eluding the authorities while he's writing on his blog, and we're really hoping that Google doesn't release his identity because he could get in a lot of trouble for what he's doing.
But for countries where revealing the identities of anonymous bloggers is likely to have less severe consequences, bloggers want the best of both worlds, getting to name names without ever running the risk of being named themselves.
A lot of people in the professional journalism circles would say we have to play by what is a fairly tightly defined set of rules. How is it that this Wild West community of the internet has been allowed to kind of develop without those checks and balances. And I think what we're seeing now is that those kind of cultures starting to collide.
It's a collision that blurs an already confused line.
In the vast majority of cases, bloggers have the right to anonymity. The people who have been whistleblowers outed government scandals, blogged about election problems in their country and have to remain anonymous because, you know, they're going to be tracked down if they know who they are.
Now, the other side of that coin is you get the kind of the Wild West mentality where people think that they can just write anything about anybody without fear of redress. So I think it is, you know, a slightly schizophrenic kind of approach that a lot of us have to the online world. We want to be able to say what we think and we want to be able to post anonymously. But on the other hand, we just throw data out left, right and centre. And I think a lot of cases will occur now, which will, you know, I guess will start to give people pause for thought.
But for a large number of bloggers around the world, the luxury of anonymity is not available at all. Their identities have already been logged by authorities where they live. For many, it is too late.
More Global Village voices now on the blogosphere and whether anonymity is in the public interest.
I believe that anyone, anywhere, has the right to be anonymous online. But that if they want to be anonymous to make any type of accusation or to make any type of statement about a third party or person, that they need to back it with evidence. That way, you can't check out if the person is who they say they are, but you can check out the facts.
Being anonymous on the internet is fine as long as you remain civil. The problem comes when people use their anonymity as a shield to say things that they frankly wouldn't have the guts to say if they had to use their real name.
Regular viewers of this program will know all about theonion.com, which we referenced earlier. The American website deals in what it calls fake news. It started out by spoofing newspapers and has since taken on television news. This time they're satirizing the torture debate in the news media, pointing out just how ridiculous some of the arguments are by simply replacing a military interrogator with a mythological 11-foot-tall, half-man, half-bovine beast. This will all make a bit more sense in about 5 seconds when you watch our web video of the week. We'll see you next time at The Listening Post.
This week, the military began closing the controversial labyrinth, which for 7 years housed the brutal minotaur they used to interrogate terror suspects. But Congress and the American people are still demanding to know who will be held accountable for authorizing the minotaur maze.
Well, I can tell you that right now. No one should be held accountable because the use of the minotaur was necessary.
Yeah, so forcing prisoners to wander in an infinite labyrinth, living in fear of being torn limb from limb by the minotaur may seem harsh to some people now, but you have to remember what it was like after 9/11.
That flesh-hungry half-man, half-bull kept us safe from the terrorists.
Look, recently released classified memos show that many of the suspects held at this facility suffered serious psychological damage because of the labyrinth's constantly shifting walls, not to mention the dozens who had their spines added to the Minotaur's spine pile.
Look, I work for the Bush administration, and this is the fault of the media. They have blown this whole Minotaur issue out of proportion. For one thing, the Minotaur is only 11 feet tall, not 20 like is commonly reported.
It doesn't matter whether the Minotaur used one razor-sharp axe or 7.
Jason, look, the terrorists would do a lot worse to you. They drag you up the side of a mountain and have your bowels pecked out by griffins.
We could use griffins, but we don't use griffins, and I think that's what separates us from them.
This maze violates the Geneva Convention, which prohibits the use of any bovine monster who wields an axe and has teeth longer than 9 inches.
It doesn't make sense. Every terrorist out there is now going to be trained on how to resist talking to a minotaur while he disembowels him with his razor-sharp arms.
Yeah, now you want to tie the hands and hooves of our interrogators even further?